this. And then live transcript. There we go. Can we see the transcript? There it is.
I can see the transcript.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, we're recording and transcribing, automatic transcribing. I take no credit.
Okay. Why don't we start with the approval of the minutes? I apologize in advance. I was on the road driving on a freeway when I last attended the meeting, and fortunately for me, Mark Krensick filled in and always, as always, just does an exemplary job, but I did not get to write down all of the details. And so I went from memory, which is a little shaky these days after all the things going on. So if everyone could please look at the meeting minutes. Corla, if you could please post them. And if we could, I think, for example, I made a mistake. I think Sam was in attendance. And there might be a couple of other things, and I think the vote totals might be off a bit.
Okay, let's see. Let me move this over.
I can see it.
Perfect. Did we leave you off, Sam? Is there anybody else that was present or not?
I thought Margaret was there.
I think she was. I think she was in and out. Sam,
Was
were
she?
you?
Okay, and I think Sam was there too when I was thinking about it, you know, in retrospect.
Where's Sam?
Sam, you're muted.
There he is.
There we go.
There
I
he
stuck
is.
up on me. Yes, I was present at the last meeting.
Perfect.
Thank you for.
Okay, I'll amend that.
catching that.
I'll amend that to add you, Sam. But Corla, you need to help me here. I thought that our votes were all 6-0 for and 6-0 against.
I think that was right. I think it was unanimous.
So was Margaret, but that's 7 people. Would that mean that Margaret,
Oh, well,
was Margaret a non-voting member?
yeah,
A
she's a
community
non-voting member. She's just in attendance.
Okay, great. I'll change those. I'll amend those meeting minutes after this and resend
Yeah,
them to you.
just to add Sam is all we need.
Got it. Okay. With
So
that
I'll
said,
I'll move to approve the
Second.
minutes with the change.
okay, all in favor?
Oh, okay.
And today we have 1, 2,
Joe, I have to
Three.
abstain. I wasn't at the, as being a new member, I'm abstaining. I wasn't. at
okay,
that
so we
meeting.
have a 4-0, I think, Corla.
Yes.
Okay, since Brad didn't stick around to vote. And has anyone heard, is Mark Krensick going to be remaining as a community member?
Yes.
But he's not here today.
He's not here. I sent him all the info and didn't hear from him.
And Robert Tripp Jackson cannot be here today. He emailed me, but he wasn't here last month either, I don't think.
Okay.
Let me ask that as a question. Does anyone recall, was Robert present
I
last?
don't believe so.
I don't believe so. Okay, great.
Yes, I also don't remember hearing him.
Okay. Well, I think then that we're correct on the record. And so I appreciate everyone's input on that. With that, let's move to non-agenda public comments. There's no time limit. Does anybody have any comments they would like to make? Corla, most specifically, you usually update us.
Well, I sent an email around, but it seems that the transit people are allowing under 18 riders to ride for free. I don't know if that includes the trolley or just the bus, but that's, I think, a very important step towards meeting some climate goals by letting kids, you know, let their parents off the hook to have to pay for their transportation to and from school and places. So that's a positive thing. And that's all I have. Just
I think that would get kids used to riding public transit, potentially. Again, it depends to where you're going and how convenient it is, obviously. But, you know, if you're 16 and you don't have a car or one that you're supposed to have.
You know, at least one city, Oklahoma City, has made transit free for everybody. And
That's a great idea.
you know, one of the things that's always galled me, because I tend to be a data-driven person, but you have to be looking at the right data. You know, MTS looks at fare box recovery as the data point for whether or not they're successful. It's not ridership, it's not service levels, it's how much money gets put in the fare box. I just think that's wrong. And I really wish some other cities, including San Diego, would try doing a free fare system.
Well, Mammoth does that. You can get anywhere in Mammoth on their
That's true.
shuttles, anywhere. We were there in our RVs, didn't have to rent a car. We could go anywhere and everywhere.
Well, that's kind of a small experiment.
It is, but it's my first experience with that, and it was great. It works just fine.
Well, I think that Paul raised a really fascinating point, and that to me is that the cost of installing public transit has got to be 100 to 1 more than it generates as a revenue stream. So, or some multiplier higher than it generates as in revenue. So that does make sense. I mean, if you've got the London Underground, that's one thing, or the New York subway system. But in a city like San Diego, I can't see it ever being a break even or a money generator. Maybe I'm wrong. Paul, can you comment on that?
It's not as big a discrepancy as you would think.
Really?
I think that they're getting, I found the number 30% fare box recovery is the number that's stuck in my memory, but I'm not going to claim that that's correct. But it's I think higher than you might think.
So it's not 100 to 1. It's maybe 30 to,
Yeah.
well, 3 to 1.
Or 4 to 1 or 5 to 1, something. I don't know.
And then the
But,
county, I
But
sent
still,
that-
when you take into account what it costs to implement the fare system and all the things that go into the compass cards or whatever they're calling them now, and the contract with the companies that manage and oversee the fare system. I can't think that it couldn't be more efficient to be done a different way, and also increase ridership, which is our goal.
That's the goal. Yeah. Making
the
it where it's
county-
not a stigma, it's a convenience.
And the county's switching to VMT, vehicle miles traveled, as well. And the city developed, we were reading about that years ago when they started all the heavy development in Mission Valley. And so I sent that email around about the county measuring instead of trips and, whatever they used to measure for traffic impact, they're calling it vehicle miles traveled, which is in the favor of adding more people to the area. So.
Well, I can speak from experience of dealing with BMT that it is almost unanimously hated by the East County outlying counties like Julian and Alpine and places like that, because it essentially is a moratorium on development because it's a number of miles. And there is really there are very few limited options for public transit out there. If you're on the coast, it's much less punitive. But yeah, it's a thing that's come under a lot of fairly heated debate.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any informational items? The two kind of bleed together.
Oh, yes, Matt called a long-range planning meeting. It's for tonight at 6:30. And I sent the link out for anybody to register that's interested. It's also on the website. And I know Sam can't be there tonight. So when I last looked, there were only 2 people registered. So if anybody's interested in attending that, it is at 6:30 today. You wanted to get it in before the board meeting and kind of get started. So I'm real proud of him for having a meeting. It's not the most convenient, but here we go. Let's see if we can get something done.
Okay. I unfortunately have a meeting at 6:30, but, and I saw some emails going back and forth about requests to try to schedule meetings on other than project review day, just because so many people who are in this meeting are the types who are active in others. And it's just a lot of meeting commitments for one day.
Yeah.
My agenda, I was going to say my agenda changed slightly, so I may be there by 7 o'clock.
Oh, good.
I'll try. Yeah.
Well, we'll watch for you, Sam.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then Javier, this is your first meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for having me on the committee, and I'm looking forward to participating. I'll probably sit back and try to learn as much as I can, and
Well, tell me just for a few, or tell us just for a couple of minutes, a little bit about your background and experience. I remember briefly from the previous introductions that were made when Fred had everyone go around, at last month's meeting. But since you're on project review, let's refresh my memory, please.
Oh, sure. Well, like I said, Joe, thanks for allowing me to be part of the team here, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody. I have 40 years of experience as a civil engineer.
Oh.
I actually started with the city of San Diego. I started my career and spent about half of my time on the public side, from 16 years with the city of San Diego, and then 7 years as the assistant director at the port, and then went to the private side, and I've sort of semi-retired last July, just doing a little bit of work. And so, yeah, most of my civil work actually started at the building department as a structural plan checker.
Okay.
But
Are you a structural engineer too?
no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I spent 3 years there, and then permits sloughed off, and they asked me if I wanted, being one of the newer folks there, they asked me if I wanted to transfer to the water utilities department. And so most of my career now has been on water wastewater, and working on large water wastewater projects, treatment facilities. Actually was part of the team on the Catalina pipeline project.
Oh.
So sorry about the work there. I know you guys are familiar with that. So
Distant memory now.
yes, yeah. It had to be done. So
The minute a road reopens, it's distant memory.
yeah, right. So yeah, that's just in a nutshell my background.
Well, welcome. I'm very happy that you decided to join our group. I think it's a really fun group, and we do a lot of work reviewing quite a diverse range of projects. And for me, I love it because I am aware of what's going on in the point. What's interesting is that a lot of projects that go on in the point don't come before us, but what it is what it is, and we review the ones that come before us. So with that, let's get started on the action items, please. We have a fairly concise agenda today, but I think one of the action items might take quite a bit more time. I had 3 projects slated until about 10 o'clock Monday morning, when the architect on the 3rd called and said that she just isn't ready yet, doesn't have enough feedback from the city, and is having some issues with the city. So I like to keep, obviously, the agendas to 3 projects, simply so that it doesn't take an hour and a half or 2 hours of everyone's time. But sometimes if one that was slated falls off, we have a short agenda, which is today. So with that, let's get started. Our first project is at 4445 Cape May Avenue. And the applicant is a gentleman named Scott Moss. And I think I saw him on the computer. Yes, I see you there, Scott. It's basically, it's an interesting project. It's basically a 2-story detached ADU. It's on a concrete alley that's 20 feet wide, and the garage on top of which, or the property is set back. There's room to turn around, but it's a peculiar dead end alley. It's a nice little project, and it actually has some parking. So Scott, with that, why don't I turn it over to you? And as we rehearsed a little bit, can you please go through and show everyone your drawings?
Sure. It's okay to share my screen then?
Yes, sir. And welcome.
So I'll do that.
There you go.
How's that look? All right.
That looks great.
Well, thank you very much for letting me speak to you guys today. Again, as Joe mentioned, my name is Scott Moss. I'm with Field and Studio, and I'm representing the applicant, Russ Winslow, on this project. As mentioned, the project is 4445 Cape May, which is just near the intersection of Santa Barbara. It's about a 7,000 square foot lot. There's an existing single family residence and detached garage on site, which are to remain. Actually, want to just start with the site plan, so it always kind of makes sense. So Cape May is here to the right. and you see the existing residence. We've got a driveway coming off Cape May along the westerly side of the property line, leading to an existing detached 2-car garage. All of that front half of the property is remaining as is with no work proposed.
And you indicated they do use that garage.
They do, yeah, it's fully functioning. And again, we're not touching that structure at all in this proposal. So as you can see on the site plan, what we're proposing here is a detached structure to the rear near the alley that includes both a 2-car garage as well as an ADU. The ADU is 2 stories, so you've got a portion of it on the ground floor and then the other portion on the second floor.
Could you explain how the site topography works with the grade changes and the drop to where the residential portion is and why the garage is where it is?
Sure, it's pretty flat along the rear with a gentle slope, and then as you get to the front, you can kind of see it gets steeper down. And if you guys are familiar with Cape May, there's a really wide right-of-way kind of park strip planted area, and then it slopes up to the site. The site sits up about 4 or 5 feet above the street in that location. The alley is pretty flat in here, and then it kind of dips down as you go into the site. So there's just a little bit of fill in this location so that the garage meets the alley, and we kind of bridge the difference in the grades there. Real quick on setbacks, the site allows 4-foot side setbacks. The rear setback is 13 feet. If you guys are familiar with RS-17, although you allowed to take 10 foot of it from the center line of the alley. So it's really a 3-foot setback from the PL at the rear. What we're proposing is that the garage itself, we're setting it back 6 feet from the property line, so we have a good distance to get in and out of the garage. The alley is only 20 feet wide, improved, so we thought 26 would be a little bit easier to maneuver those cars. And then on the side, the westerly side, there's a neighboring structure pretty close to the PL, so we're doing about an 8.5-foot setback in that location where 4 foot is allowed. The opposite side, on the easterly property line, side property line, we're utilizing the 4-foot setback to the ADU, and then just a 1-foot rear setback on the ADU there.
And could you explain how you got the 1-foot rear setback?
The ADU ordinance allows a 0-foot, and so we pushed it pretty close, but we thought let's give at least a little bit of relief and some separation from that drive
For
aisle.
constructability.
Yeah. Also, just some space to put some vehicle bollards to really create that separation.
And can I ask, there will be no access off the alley into the ADUs? Is that correct?
Not entirely. We have a gate proposed on both sides of the structure, so both into the side yard on the west, a fence and a gate, and the side yard on the east, a fence and the gate. There's no door directly to the alley, but you can come through the gate down the side yard and enter into the side of the ADU. That's what's
And then
A person or a car?
a person.
That's what I wondered too. There's no vehicular access. Is that correct?
but there's a
Just directly
2-car
into
garage.
the garage, just into the garage. So the site, again, there's a driveway on the front from Cape May that brings you into the existing garage. So we've got 2 cars there, and then a new garage off the alley that you access directly from the alley.
Okay.
2 cars there.
Um,
So we're parking a total of 4 cars, not counting the driveways or on street.
And do you know what the circumstance is, why that alley just dead ends at someone's house?
I think when they built these things, as you go down to Guizot Street there's a big grade change, and they just didn't deal with it, right? I mean, the street does, but the alley just kind of hits this steep slope at the end, and it's kind of planted. And
Fortunately for everyone, including the neighbor just next door to you, they go down to the end almost where it does dead end, and there's some really wide driveways, so people are able to do it basically a T-turn turnaround and go back out the alley. Although in the time I was there, I saw a couple of cars using the alley, so it's one of the better alleys, albeit that it's dead ended.
Yeah,
It's a paper alley down close to Gizot. There's no development there, but it is so steep that you really couldn't continue the paving down there, which wouldn't be usable.
Mhm.
exactly.
I think you're exactly right, Paul. Okay, can you talk us through the upper floors?
Yeah, so again, that's the site plan. Just a little bit more detail on the floor plan. again, the garage is set back 6 feet from the PL. We've got a 2-car garage, a little extra depth in there, so they have some room to store for storage. So hopefully they park and store there. A man door out the side and leads you down some steps into the rear yard. The ADU, we've got a side entry and pretty compact little space, but it's got 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms on that floor, stackable washer dryer, and then your stairs up to the 2nd floor. As we get up to level 2, it's pretty simple, kind of an open plan, loft style space, kitchen, living, dining space, and then a really large deck. So I think the owner's intentions on this is really more of a guest space for their family to visit. They live in, about 1,100 square foot original 40s cottage up front and intend to continue to do so. So this allows them the space to have grandparents and family come and visit their kids and that kind of thing. So it's a bit of a, amenity space for them as well to use when they don't have guests. So they have a nice covered outdoor deck. Very large indoor-outdoor space. Really, the dining space becomes outside, and it's a sort of a second living room for them.
Is that a cantilever?
It is a bit of a cantilever. We've got some posts picking it up though.
Oh, there they are.
Posts here and
Okay.
here. Yeah.
Could you please discuss the parameters as you and I were reviewing the floor area ratio and the height envelope boundaries?
Sure. Well, let me go to the height first because I've got the elevations here.
And there's no bathroom on that 2nd floor?
No, just the two down below.
And down, okay.
Why didn't you put a little guest bath up there?
We had one earlier. I think they didn't, trying to keep the budget constrained to some degree, and felt like they liked just the openness of it without it, just the open plan up there. But to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if it got added in along the way. We'll see how it unfolds. But height-wise, we're just under 22 feet in height, so we're actually sitting below the angled building envelope that happens at 24, well below the 30-foot height. So
Both stories come in at 24?
sorry,
Both stories are coming in at 24?
under 24, right? It's
Under
22.
24?
Yeah.
And how about your floor area ratio?
So we are under, let me go here. So the allowable is, we're 0.57 in this zone, so it's 3,900. And we add up to 3,281 at this point,
Okay.
including the ADU and existing house,
Okay.
as well as both garages.
Okay.
So why don't I take you to the fun stuff? I mean,
Sure.
it's all about pretty pictures these days, right?
Always.
So here's some conceptual rendering. So what you see in the white, that's the existing garage, detached garage. The white building in the rear is the neighbor's garage. And in the back there is the proposed structure. The pool and deck in the yard is a concept. It's not part of this permit. And so it's sort of a future phase for them.
You noted it that way.
I did, yeah. I want to make sure that was clear. So as you can see, the 2nd floor has the canopy extending over about half the deck. So a good portion of the deck is covered in a really, quite expansive open space up there.
Will you have views from up there?
I believe they will, yeah. I think down the alley towards the ocean, but maybe even better is towards the north, towards the bay. I think they'll pick up quite a good view up there.
Okay.
The front house has no view at this time?
The front house does not have a view. The front house, here's some pictures of the front house. So it is single story, but again, you can see it's elevated above the street. But unless you're standing on the roof, you're not picking up views on that space.
And Corla, just so everyone knows, Cape May is one of those very narrow concrete streets.
Yes.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows that the west end of the street, it is so steep that the sidewalks are stairs.
Oh, I did not know that. That's a steep sidewalk.
Yeah, and in fact, you see people out there running the stairs all the time for exercise.
Interesting.
Almost like San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they haven't put a 2nd story on the house, but elected to do the ADU. I wouldn't be surprised if someday down the line the house gets a 2nd story remodel.
Could be.
Okay. Can I ask just one question as an architect?
Absolutely.
I noticed you have single windows in the bedroom.
Hmm.
Was there any thought to trying to get cross ventilation or some more glazing in there? They feel pretty dark to me.
Yeah, not a bad consideration. We're sort of balancing being on an alley, being on the first floor, and also trying to preserve some privacy from their space to the ADU.
I get it. I
Um,
get it,
but
it
it's
just
a good
seems
it's a good thought. It's a good consideration. I will take a look at that.
they meet egress requirements, I presume.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, I mean, maybe there's a way to even internally where the entry is to have some windows or a transom window there. And
Some transoms, some high transoms or something that
Yeah.
no one could crawl in the middle of the night, but
yeah,
just to get ventilation up there. You're sitting kind of high, that ought to have great breezes, but single windows, it's just gonna feel, I'm afraid it's gonna feel a little dark and a little depressed.
all right, good point. I'll take note of that. So again, this is kind of looking at, we've got a little space under the overhang here for surfboards and maybe an outdoor shower or something. There's the side yard access.
Mhm.
So kind of just a fun family space, very, very functional for them.
Yeah, it looks interesting. Corla, Paul, Javier, Sam, does anyone have any comments?
I was going to observe, I'm glad he has the parking on site because Cape May, from the few times I've driven up and down, seems to be pretty fully parked. So I think that's a big plus on the development from my point of view.
And the community and the planning area appreciate the parking. Let's just say that. That's
Mhm.
Yeah, especially because there really is no street parking on Cape May because it's so narrow.
Right.
Yeah, there's actually, even though there's a lot of garages on the alleys, there's a lot of curb cuts on Cape May too. So there's loss of street parking to those curb cuts. And yeah, we thought it was important to park this and not push it. And that's a view from the rear. So this is kind of what you see from the alley.
Mhm.
And one of the things, I mean, a lot of this was driven by trying to capture those views, but I also feel like, the alley, especially a dead end like that, I like to put some eyes on it, the whole adage of eyes on the street and having space where people are utilizing their deck and their outdoor space and they kind of see the alley. I think it just adds to the community and adds to, frankly, the security of the neighborhood if people are constantly looking over things.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you provided 2 parking spaces where
Yes.
technically I don't think you needed any. And I also appreciate very much the fact that you removed the door of the garage several feet. I don't know if it was 4 or 6. I don't remember exactly, but it's enough offset from the edge of the alley that, like you said in your comments, it's maneuverable. And that's really important. If people are going to use a garage, it's got to be convenient to use.
Agreed.
I had one question. There's 2 ADUs, as I understand the project. Is one of them intended to be a rental?
No, Sam, there's one ADU.
Oh, one ADU.
Just
I
one.
thought-
It's just a 2-story ADU.
Okay, that's what threw me off. I see.
And what is the square footage of your ADU, Scott?
It's just under 1,200.
But
1180.
it's under 1,200.
I think it's 1124 if I remember right.
Yeah. I knew it was under, but I couldn't recall exactly. Oh yeah, there it is on the comment sheet. All right, does anyone else have any other comments, or does anyone have a motion?
well, I'll move to approve the project and send it to the full board next week.
Okay.
Second,
Orla and Paul. And with that, let's take a vote, please. Can you close your screen share, Scott?
I can do that, yeah.
So
I
we
can do
see
it.
who's on.
I got it.
Oh, thank you.
All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Sam.
It looks to be 1, 2,
Yeah.
5-0.
5-0. Well,
That
good
is-
job, Scott. Just, I know you and I have already discussed this, but just to reiterate briefly while I have you on the line. The full board, the Peninsula Community Planning Board meets next Thursday. The meetings start at 6 o'clock. Your agenda item could be heard as early as 6:15 or 6:30, but more likely it'll be at, say, 7. Much like with this, we'll ask you to make a brief presentation, more brief than you did today, is probably best. And be sure to register also for that meeting before it commences.
And the agenda will be posted Monday on the website, but if Joe has your email, we can send you that information as well. So.
Yeah, I've been following up with everyone. Just, it's, these are onesie twosies, and it's easy to forget that you have a meeting, like Mr. Nowicki last week. It's like, that today? Okay.
Real quick question. So does the full board like we do presentations and discussion, or is there consent calendar items or anything like that? Or
It's full, it'll be fully heard.
okay.
It's much like we did today, but there will be, I don't know, 14 members or something that vote on it. But we go into more detail typically today than they will next week.
Okay. No problem. Well, thank you very
Forward
much.
to
I appreciate you
seeing you
guys, your time and your help.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, moving right along, our second project, the applicant is a gentleman named Tom King, and we've had a number of conversations. And as well, there's another gentleman who owns a house next door, and there's some issues with view impediment. But basically, let me introduce the project. It's a major remodel, an amendment to the coastal development permit. It's at 4414 Bermuda Avenue, and basically they're demolishing an existing single-family residence and detached garage and constructing a new 3,175 square foot, 2-story family residence with a basement and a detached garage, which also will contain an ADU. So there again is the applicant, Tom King, and I'd like to turn it over to him and have Tom first make your presentation, and then there will be another gentleman who I see on the Zoom meeting, Tom Marshall, who lives next door and has some concerns about it. We've had numerous conversations about this, and as I said, we're neutral. We're here to analyze what's put before us.
All right, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I'll go ahead and share my screen here, if that's okay.
Yes.
All right, can you guys see this?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so this is what was presented back in January or submitted to the city for the CDP. Now, the property owners, they processed a CDP and even a building permit 2 years ago to build a two-bedroom ADU on top of an existing garage in their backyard. As they were waiting to pull the trigger on the actual construction, getting bids and such, they realized what they really needed was to revamp the entire site. They're a family of 5 with 3 children. They have been living in a approximately 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. So somewhat cramped quarters on one of the standard OB lots, 50 by 140 feet, 7,000 square feet. So when I got involved, we looked at their program, and I'll walk you through that quickly. So first thing I did is I brought in BWE Incorporated to do a site survey. They're also the civil engineers on this. And so we did the site survey, and I walked the site. I even climbed on the roof of this house because we're situated between 2 other properties. There's a 2-story house directly to the west, a 1-story house to the east. But the grade, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Bermuda, so slopes pretty extremely. And even on our site, from the northeast corner down to the southwest corner, we have 12 feet of slope on the site. It's fairly subtle throughout most of the site until you get to the edge down here, and then it drops off pretty abruptly down to the street and into the public right of way. So when they were giving me their wish list of programmatic requirements, they knew they wanted a larger house that could accommodate all the kids. So everybody has their own bedroom. They're not sharing rooms. And they wanted to keep the programmatic function of a 2-bedroom ADU above a garage in the backyard. They don't think they'll ever rent it. They'll reserve that as an option, but they're thinking for long-term care that one of their children has special needs, and they may need help in the future. So they're thinking potential living caregiver later on in the ADU, have that for future use. So the programmatic requirements were 4-bedroom house, 3.5 bath for the main residence, and also the same 2-bedroom ADU, slightly modified in the back. They also, their wish list included a pool and a spa, and to preserve as much yard within that 7,000 square feet as we can after we fit all these programmatic requirements on it. When we looked at the site, so this is the existing house right here, the footprint. There are these retaining walls in the middle that almost bisecting the lot. And the building pad is at 206.5 feet elevation. And right here, it jumps up to 209.5 to the top of the retaining wall. So there's a 2.5 foot vertical leap once you get here. And my assignment was to not extend development of the front house beyond this line. They also wanted to access the yard and have it as a play area and preserve as much of it as possible and have level land. So when you build to this point, of course, your floor has to go up slightly because we can't, to meet the requirement for the finished floor at the main level, we have to be 8 inches above finished grade adjacent. So that means the floor height of the main house has to come up 3 feet. So we can accommodate that with a crawl space. We also looked at just raising, and instead of keeping the existing garage they have, since we're doing so much site work anyway to build a new house, we looked at just eliminating the existing garage because the existing floor level is lower than the alley, and they have had water infiltration coming off that alleyway during heavy downpours. So we're raising the floor height 6 inches at the garage, and then putting a 2-bedroom ADU on top of that. So we also looked at the best view corridors for them. And I've climbed on top of this roof. Now there's a aerial here. So we're right here. Between these two houses, there's a 2-story house directly to the west. And standing on this ridge line, I realized that it's hard to actually see directly over the house to the west because it's a fairly tall 2-story house, and there's a chimney right in the front. There's also a large coral tree right here that is, fairly tall.
Can you show us again with your pointer so that everyone's clear where you're looking?
Sure. Can you see my cursor here?
Yes.
Okay, so
On the
this
upper
is the
left.
house. The existing house. Here's the existing garage. This is the house directly to the west, and it's a 2-story house. We are single-story. There's a large chimney right in the front, and there's a large coral tree right here on the corner. Now, I'd done a house, extensive remodel, 2nd-story addition down the street from them. And I remembered with that project on Bermuda, a lot of the best view corridors off of Bermuda are actually to the southwest, overlooking this large, this wide street of Bermuda Avenue. And because of the slope, you can tend to see, blue horizon if you look to the southwest. And on that project, it was a remodel in addition, so I didn't have control over the angle of the building. So I was trying to force the view at a diagonal direction. And here I said, well, why don't we just turn the entire building on a 20-degree angle so that it faces, can you guys see this? Yeah. So that it faces the view. And put on a 2nd story high enough where the floor line of the 2nd story is right around the height of this roof. If you look at a site section here, and this tells a little more of the story where we have this, quite a bit of slope. It really drops down right here. This is where those retaining walls currently are. And this was the edge of where I was told I could develop the front house. And then we drop down, pretty dramatically right before we get to the public right of way. So the existing house is here, this dashed line, and we're trying to get the floor level up high enough so that we could see a little past the corner of the house to the next of us and towards that view corridor facing southwest. Now it has been brought to my attention. I know that Tom Marshall is here to express his concern. He has the property to the east of us. It's a single-story residence. He enjoys an elevation that's about 6 feet higher than finished floor here, maybe even a little more. And his finished floor is about 8 or 9 feet above the existing finished floor of this house. So of course he can currently see directly over our roof line as a single-story house. If we add a second story, no matter what the height, it's going to block his view if we keep the house in the existing footprint. As you can see, this dashed white line, that's the existing house. Now the existing house is about 8 feet behind the front yard setback. We were trying to control our massing so that we weren't infringing upon his property's view drastically, even though we would limit in the middle any view across the lot, just as a function of having a 2-story structure. And he does have a view deck out here that you can see is almost in line with the front yard setback. So we kept our 2nd-story massing terraced back. So this dash red line is the 2nd-story enclosed floor footprint. The black line with the gray, that's the main level. So this is 1-story in height, which means that from his floor line, he should still be able to see some view towards the southwest here over the 1-story element. In addition, he can see past 1/3 of the lot here with unobstructed view. And from his roof deck, should be able to see over the 1-story element that's going to be lower than his finished floor height, direct due west. But there's limited work that we can do to open up a view corridor right through the middle of the building, since we're trying to fit quite a bit of program into a fairly small footprint. You can see that our overall footprint isn't that large for the neighborhood, even though it is a 3,000 square foot house. And then there are some views to the northwest. Now, I can walk you through a little more of the plan here. So, this is the existing street view. So you can see we're tucked in a little hole here between this house, and this is Tom Marshall's house over here. So we're trying to get up high enough to actually take advantage of some view. So that was part of the design criteria, was to have a 2nd floor with some livable space and a deck that they can actually take advantage of the view from Bermuda Avenue. We have, since this was submitted in January, we've been taking a look at modifying it before we go back in for resubmittal. So we started off with, and part of the design criteria was we started with modern farmhouse design, which something like this. We're now rethinking that and looking more at a transitional Cape Cod style. So this is our proposed front elevation street view. Here it is with a composite overlay over this street view to show that, from this deck, you can still see across here. So I did this overlay primarily for the purpose of showing that there is still view potential across this lot at the front of it, just not in the middle of it. Let me walk you through the rest of the renderings here. So this is the southeast perspective. So this would be uphill towards Santa Barbara Street, that you would see this corner of the house that's at a 20-degree angle. This is when you're down Bermuda, driving up, so the southwest perspective. And we're going to be utilizing, as far as material palette, that has changed a little bit. So we're going to be doing white trim, gray shake siding, and to control costs a little bit in certain areas that are out of sight, we'll use stucco and a little bit of stone veneer. So that's the basic material palette. That's an overhead. So to walk you through the floor plan here, 1 second. So Bermuda Street is over here in this orientation. We come up the steep grade with some steps to an entry terrace. We arrive at the entry. We have a living room, kitchen, breakfast nook. This breakfast nook is 1 story in height. Most of this kitchen is 1 story in height. So this whole area that abuts is adjacent to the east property line is all single story through here. We go into a dining room, pantry. We have a radial staircase going up to a common area above. We have a mudroom office, powder room. Bedroom 4 is located on the main level to be a future master suite, even though the current master is upstairs, because we're thinking about aging in place and to have that accessible so you don't have to traverse stairs if you're no longer able to later on. They did want a pool, so that was a hard thing to fit in here and preserve any yard area. But we have Todd Fry is the landscape architect on this, and he came up with a pretty clever plan for angling, since we have the angles of the house with this 20-degree orientation. He provided an angled yard so that the kids can play through here and get the full width of the property with this pool kind of smack dab in the middle of the site. In the back, we have a slightly enlarged 2-car garage. The current one, you can only fit 1 car in comfortably. And an extra parking space off the alley here. So we have 3 off-street parking spaces total. We are, because of that in the site section, sorry to make you dizzy here if I'm scrolling too quickly. In this area where we're backfilling right here to bring up the entry terrace, we're cutting in a mechanical and storage basement. And it's just under this section of the house. Lost my place here. So this is the basement plan where we come down and we're going to cut into the grade here for an access point right here where we're going to house the pool equipment out of sight. And have a mechanical room. And then the rest of this area is going to be additional storage since they plan on parking their cars in the garage and will no longer have that accessible for storage as they currently use their garage. At the upper level, we arrive at a common room with a view deck. So this is going to be their family room, essentially. This is where they're going to hang out, enjoy the view, have a barbecue up there. Their master bedroom and bath are over here at the north or southeast corner to take advantage of those views. Back at the 2-bedroom ADU, we come up some stairs here to an entry deck. We come into a small living room, small kitchen, 1 shared bath, and then 2 bedrooms. And here we are actually, when we go back to the city, we're offsetting these upper level walls, both here and here, to be a foot further back, so we're 5 feet from the property line instead of 4, so that we can get some windows in there, have some cross ventilation like you had mentioned earlier. Currently, we're too close to the property line to put windows in here. So we're trying to soften that edge a little bit. Another thing that we've decided to eliminate when we go back is we were trying to put a roof deck on here, a very small one. And we just decided we're trying too hard. We already have, a view from this second story deck below. And the stair was getting very awkward. This area within the height limit for the guardrail was getting really confined. So we're simplifying this roof, and we're just going to put a hip roof on this edge, still keep a belvedere here for natural light to come into that upper level common room. And otherwise, we're relying on the light filtering through this covered area, which, even though this is south orientation, it would be dark in here too much of the day without some top lighting. But we don't want to put skylights in there, obviously, for heat gain. So we're abandoning this roof deck concept, and we're going to go back to the city with a simplified roof structure, soften massing towards the easterly neighbor, where we're stepping back an additional foot, easing the edges a little bit. And here are the original elevations, and they've changed slightly. This is the front elevation.
Let me jump in. Are these the drawings you sent me just before today's meeting? The most
Yes.
current? Okay.
Well, these are the ones that were submitted to the city back in January. The only thing new that I'm showing you today are the updated renderings, because these have been updated. The plan set has not been updated yet. We're going to do that after we hear from the board and put together our resubmittal package.
Can you go back to your height envelope, please?
Sure.
I was just kind of starting to study that.
Yeah. These drawings.
Yeah.
So we have this guardrail will be eliminated when we go back. So the only area that comes anywhere close to the maximum building envelope is the belvedere, which is right in the dead center of the house.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And what is that height?
That is, let me look at my roof plan to tell you.
And normally we like to see a dimension string to the top of grade and,
Yeah.
and a
Like-
determination of whether or not you're classifying this as a hillside lot, which I don't believe you are. But carry on.
Well, we are, let's see.
I know you discussed that you're under it, but I don't see any actual dimension on it.
Yeah, I'll have to clarify that.
I think that was further down, because I can't see it from this. There was a drawing that was further down that might.
I
have-
think you're right on the elevations, yes.
Yeah.
Here it is.
here,
Okay, so we have 25'3" to the top of the belvedere. Now
From
that
from
was,
your
that's
existing or
prop D.
proposed, well, wait, from your existing or proposed grade, where's that from?
That's from the
And how
datum
you
point. So
measure-
that's per prop D measurements. That's not per the parallel plane projection. So the
Oh.
actual, go ahead.
When you say prop D measurement, then you're taking it from the top of those planters?
I'm taking it from the datum points. So we have a low datum that's.
And the datum point is the top of the planters.
It's, let me take
Is it
it.
from, I asked you that question, you didn't answer it. Is it from your existing grade or your proposed grade or from some other point?
It's all based on existing grade, but the datum point is the lowest point within 5 feet of the structure of existing grade, not proposed
That's
grade.
per bulletin 5.5-4.
Can you show us where that is, Tom, please?
Yeah.
It's right here on the site plan. That's the datum point. And in this case, the low point is proposed because it's whichever's lowest proposed or adjacent. This is where we're cutting in for access to a basement. The high datum point for the residence is over here for property measurements, and the high datum point for the ADU is up here at the alley.
Okay, could you go back to the sections, please?
Sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And translate to where those datum points were taken approximately?
Well, the datum points are only for the property measurements.
Right.
The site sections are trying to show the parallel plane projection. So
Understood.
the two different forms of measurement.
Mhm.
So here, I will have to get you exactly what this measurement is to grade below, because I don't have your, right, there's not a dimension string on there. But it's, within 6 inches.
Okay.
At that point.
So can I just jump in with a couple quick questions?
Sure.
So you show a raised floor and you talked about the height differential across the yard and the small 2 foot or so step retaining wall.
Mhm.
Why did you not just drop the whole house a couple feet and do slab on grade and then have a stem wall on that back side?
Well, because I want to walk out to a flat yard, and we're not grading the yard back here.
Okay. And did you at all look at taking the front portion, which Tom Marshall is going to be speaking about, where your breakfast nook is? And you've got a thickened wall there. It looks as though you could do like 2 steps down or something and do a recessed breakfast nook that might be really kind of charming and get 2 more feet out of the house by just some sort of simple maneuver like that. Is that something that you've talked about or thought about, or
Now, when you say recessing it, what do you mean by that?
dropping it down? So if you go back to your floor plan of your first floor.
Yeah.
Right there. You see where you've got a fat soffit and a dashed line which shows your soffit overhead?
Yes.
Right where your cursor is.
Mhm.
You could do 2 steps down right there and recess the whole breakfast nook and make it, actually, I think it'd have a little more charm. I mean, granted, you'd have steps in your house, but you've got stairs all over your house. And that would pull that whole element down a couple of feet or a foot.
Yeah, bring it
I'm
down.
just bringing it out. I was just noticing it as you, by the way, you gave a very thorough presentation and I appreciate that, but I know that the issue at hand is going to be, I can sense that the issue at hand is going to be over your views and also your neighbor's views and over the height and the envelope. So
Mhm.
just a comment before we get going.
Well, and I mean, we're already keeping this single story. Here's our setback line. We can do 2-story to this corner,
Understood.
up to 24 feet, and we're keeping this down to a low 9-foot plate. So that's not. The
It's
views
not
from-
unreasonable. I'm just bringing up the question.
Yeah, I don't know that you would gain too much by that. Quite honestly, I think this ridgeline dropping a foot for that 4-foot portion of view there, that's between the 2nd story and the front yard setback.
Mhm.
I don't know that you're really gaining too much to introduce a step in the middle of a space that's going to be used every day.
Okay.
Well, let me follow up a little bit on Joe's comment. So your existing pad, what is at 206? And
206 and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, and your new floor pad, what is that now?
209 and a half.
So you're raising it 3 feet.
We are raising it to align with the backyard right here. So we walk out to the backyard.
Oh, okay. So rather than, I mean, another alternative would have been to put a back retaining wall and step up into it. So,
Right.
Up into
Right.
the backyard.
Yeah, rather than raising it in the front.
Well, we have a pool that's going in the backyard. And we're trying not to grade this entire backyard and preserve the level terrain they currently have.
Can I ask a quick question regarding what we're talking about here?
Sure.
The current level of the floor in the current house, how much higher in feet and inches will the proposed level be above that?
3 feet.
3 feet higher.
Mhm.
Thanks. How high are the ceilings in the kitchen nook area?
On the
Will it be
main
peak
level,
ceiling?
yeah, on the main level, we have 10-foot high ceilings. Well, I'm sorry, at the breakfast, that's a 9-foot high plate. We've tried to keep the plate heights lower
And
along
is that
the
a
corner.
flat ceiling plus the attic, or is it a peak ceiling up to the peak of the roof on the first, the breakfast nook area?
There's a peak, there's a ridge
Yeah, I'm aware of
right
that.
here.
Yeah, how high is that?
That would be a 1.5 feet taller, so 10.6 or
up
so. Yeah.
10.5 feet
Hmm.
up plus 3 feet
Correct.
above you.
So Tom, if you were back down to the original grades, how does that affect your view? You would still have views, or are you raising it to get better
Not
view?
really, not really from the main level. The current house from here, because of this coral tree that's right here, really doesn't get much view other than directly across the street. There you can see sort of down to the south of the south of OB, but there's not much direct view from the main level as it currently stands.
From your Google image, it looks like you said that's a coral tree?
Right here, correct.
Erythrina coralloides. So that's like a weed. Those things, you cut them off and snap them in the earth. Is it in the public right of way, or is it on the adjacent neighbor's property?
I haven't been to the site. Well, actually, here's another view, and that doesn't show me either. I think it's in the public right of way. I think it's a street tree.
So call the city, they'll cut it down and say it's an FAA hindrance. I mean, it seems like that tree is making people jump through a lot of hoops here. And, it just my observation.
Well, more
feels like-
than anything, to be honest, it's just to have this level consistency from the backyard into the house, so that because they're going to be using this backyard quite a bit.
I understand.
So it's so that you're not going up, 3 or 4 risers coming in and out of the house into the backyard.
Well,
So it's actually a little less about view at the front of the house than it is about just marrying up to existing grade in the center of the property.
Well, switching focus a little bit, can we talk about FAR?
Sure. So the FAR is 0.58 for this area.
Mhm.
As you know, the municipal code now allows bonuses towards ADUs. So our overall square footage, so for the main residence, it's 3,175 square feet. The ADU is 590. That gives you a total habitable of 3,765. With the garage, which is 528, that's 4,293 square feet for total site development towards FAR. When you add the bonus of 800 square feet for an ADU, that gives you a total developable area of 4,860. So the effective FAR is 0.69, and we're proposed 0.61.
Thank you.
This is the first time I've seen numbers work like this, so this is interesting. This is going to confuse the board too, I think.
it's news to me too. I've never
this is
done an
new.
ADU bonus.
Yeah.
Well, they
You were
allow a 800 square feet over the allowable FAR for ADUs. And when I was speaking with one of the planners, they told me to go ahead and calculate it this way. because they're now accepting that as part of the new zoning ordinance.
Do you know by chance if they have an info bulletin regarding that?
Yeah, because I have not.
I'm not
seen
familiar
that.
with it.
I went through the ADU ordinance pretty carefully, and I don't recall seeing that.
Okay.
I wish Mark were here.
I could bring up the section of the code
Please do.
to present. Yeah.
And then I'd like to switch topics a little bit and have Mr. Marshall make a presentation, because I know he's
Sure.
been waiting patiently and he also has a number of things to discuss before we go into a board conversation.
Okay. Should I stop sharing my screen?
No,
here?
no, go. You can stop screen sharing, but I'd appreciate it if you would please try to bring up that Unicode section. I'm simply not familiar with it.
And as I said, I went through the new ADU rules and prepared a paper for this committee. And I don't recall seeing that. I could have missed it.
Well, and they change things and issue info bulletins all the
Yeah,
time.
and they've been changing things like on the fly every week,
Yeah.
according to Mark.
But we're
Oh, yeah.
supposed to be in the know, but no one sends us the memo. So
Yeah.
you know, we're all in this together. We're not disputing you, and we're not, but it's one of those sort of informational things for us.
Yeah, it every week we get something new from the city, it seems like, and the only way we learn it is for someone like you to bring it up.
And it sounds like the planner actually brought it to him, so we're kind of stuck with that.
Because Tom, it sounds to me though, as though were it not for that 800 square foot ADU bonus that you're taking advantage of, you might be over on the FAR.
Yes.
Yeah, he is.
I don't know, several tenths.
So should we let Mr. Marshall have his say,
Yes.
Joe?
Yeah, Tom, why don't you, let me speak more clearly. Tom King, why don't you look up that ADU ordinance, if you can find it, and Tom Marshall, you've been very patient, I appreciate it, and why don't you discuss your situation?
Is it okay if I share my screen?
Of
Yes.
course.
Okay. So let's see here. Can you all see that picture? Or let me see. Hold
No,
on,
we
let me-
can't.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, not yet.
How about there? It's a picture
No.
of the
yet.
living room.
You're probably on another monitor.
Uh-oh. Hold on. Maybe they're not seeing my share screen. I have my daughter here to help me navigate this.
Thank God for kids, huh?
Yeah, I need a 12-year-old.
Yeah, seriously. There it goes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you,
There you go.
daughter.
All right. Okay, so
Priceless.
I want to thank Tom King for helping both clarify some things and also make them more confusing at the same time. This is the view that you see when you walk in my front door at my house. You can clearly see the roof line here. This house was built by my grandfather and my father and my uncles in 1951. The house 4414 was built probably the same year or the year before. I grew up with these views. What we were blessed with is a 90-degree view from when I stand in the corner here, before the infamous tree two houses down grew in, I could see down across Bermuda all the way to the foot of Bermuda Street. And then we have a view to the southwest. So this is the primary best part of the view right here. And let me see if I can remember how, oh, here we go. And when people walk in, they get drawn to this with this. This is the largest part of our ocean view, is to the west. This is probably over towards Point Loma right now. In the early days, we could see all the way to the end of Bermuda. And this is the biggest part. Now we do have more view to the southwest, but it's a smaller amount of ocean. We have had sunset views from, all year long. And here's my concern. We'll get right to this. this is the current level of the roof. It slopes from the peak over here down to the front. And we're talking about extending about 10 feet off of here. And I will show it. Let's look at another level picture here. Go. Okay. And this is standing 2 feet from the corner. This post here is the living room corner. There's a window to the left facing south. This is our west view. And from this point, we're looking right over the edge of the existing house. Now, when we bring this up 3 foot elevation somewhere in here, and then we add another, how many feet to get to the peak of that roof, it's going to be somewhere up in right around at my horizon line. But we're talking about moving it out, probably 10 feet is going to be out in here somewhere. And I don't think even over the edge of that proposed roof, I'm going to be able to see over to the horizon. Well, and then here, let's just get a different picture. So here's the other thing I wanted to point out. Whoops, sorry. This is our house up here in the corner. Can you see? I don't know if you have this full screen or not. I'm not sure.
We see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, darn. I put a line from the side of my house here across there. The brown in front of here is their deck, but this is the roof that we were pointing out in the previous picture. We go down the street, 4414 is the only one that looks like it has any roof line extending because I think the deck's below it. And down into here, all the way down to here, there's maybe a foot or two sticking out. But we're talking about taking this out 10 feet here, which is as far as my deck, which is not a roof deck. It's a deck that's the same level as the floor of our house. So even on our deck, when we look down Bermuda Street, we're going to be seeing the house at 4414, the new plan. Now, if it was down at the existing level that the house is built on right now, yeah, it's still kind of a problem for me. Do I have other view? A little bit. You know, there's still other parts of view. The best part of our 90-degree view is this first part in the first 30 degrees or so, which would be taking out a large part of the first part of our view that we've enjoyed through decades of family parties and different things like that. Easter egg hunts with the kids first, as I was a kid, then grandkids. So this is the view from my deck. So I was standing right next to the window looking west, and you could, and I think this roof line is really in line with this wall, but just me standing a couple feet away from it, you see back in a little bit. But if we go up again 3 or 4 feet, 5 feet to get to the top of that breakfast nook, we bring it out 10 feet out this way, which is the edge of my deck. You know, it's probably going to be coming out over in here. And then back about 4 feet back approximately is where the top story will start, and it'll be going up right through here. I don't think I'm going to really see anything from our living room or our deck until I start turning to the left and looking down towards Osprey Street. You know, it's a beautiful house. It's a beautiful plan and remarkable design. I appreciate that. This is my view down the other way. Originally, we had a big pine tree here that was from a Christmas tree, probably in 1968 or something like that. We removed that, and it did open up some of this view here. So am I a brat for wanting to preserve 90 degrees of the current view? Yeah, but this is our family inheritance. It means a lot to my sister and myself. I hope to retire here someday. I like Steve and Beth and their family. They've been wonderful neighbors. But my main concern, before hearing Tom talk today, was I was hoping that I could maybe, and here's the sight lines. Here's my deck, comes 10 feet out, which puts it in line with the front of their new plans. Here's the old plans, right in line with my living room, the wall facing south. I think this is what I used to be able to see all the way down to the ocean here. I can right now see all the way down to the ocean here. I'm going to probably not make it over the ridge to see the ocean here with the elevations he's talking about. So being able to see over that, not really happening. We have a kitchen window over here and a sliding glass door to walk out onto the deck. The kitchen's back over here. I always assumed that with a 2-story building, I knew it was going to happen eventually. I knew I would lose my view to the south. The view to the northwest between the buildings is filled with an avocado tree. Even if the avocado tree wasn't there, and we still had some view between those, it just goes into bushes and pescadero houses, and there's really no view there. There's just some nice foliage. So my view is, the main view is to the southwest, but he has a tree plant here. I hope it doesn't get too big. I hope it's nice and wispy like it is in the picture. And then the 3 houses along the front down here, so that they don't grow up and block the view to the southwest. But I'm looking at, I think I measured this out as about 27 degrees from here to here, give or take, of our 90-degree view. That's some of the best part of the view, with the biggest distance between the coast and the horizon. And it effectively, sunsets over the ocean will be reduced instead of all year long to maybe 6, 7, 8 months out of the year.
John, may I ask a couple questions?
Yes, please.
I appreciate your concern and the history that you have with the house, but it's essentially a public view issue. And
Yes.
that is not really enforceable by us or anyone else at the
No,
city.
I understand. I understand that.
Have you discussed with your neighbors, who you describe as lovely neighbors, have you discussed with them purchasing rights to maintain the view? It's their discretion. If you want to get out your checkbook, I'm sure they'd be willing to pull their house back or to drop it to some extent. I don't know if you've gone in that direction, or if
I haven't
asked
even
them,
really thought of that.
politely to do that, but
It's an interesting idea. This is the most I've seen of the plans. This part I had from before, and there, obviously the plans have changed a little bit.
well,
And
frankly, I think that Tom King and Steve and Beth are within their rights, assuming that they're complying with the setbacks. And I don't think it's particularly pertinent what the street setbacks average along the frontage of Bermuda, but it is very much within your rights to negotiate a view easement. That's a private party transaction, as far as I'm aware. Maybe some of the more legal sorts of minds on this committee may be able to chime in, but I've been in my past involved with a number of issues where there were public view negotiations. What's it worth to you to ask their architect, Mr. King, to pull the house back or to drop it down 5 feet or whatever? There's a myriad of ways to solve this problem. But I'm afraid that as the committee goes, we don't have a lot of wherewithal to say we feel bad for you, but therefore this project isn't approved.
No, I understand, and I appreciate your suggestions. I would love to talk to Tom King about what the possibilities are, to see that I understand everything, all their rationale. It makes perfect sense and is good for them and not so good for me. I would be hoping to, if I could get 5 feet. I thought maybe they could push the whole thing 5 feet back and make a bigger entertainment deck out front or something, but I'm more than open to discuss what the possibilities are. I don't want to alienate Steve or Beth. They're good neighbors. I would love to talk to you, Tom, at your convenience. Maybe we can set up a date and see just what the possibilities are.
Well,
it's all good people here involved. It's not that, and I understand what the but the concerns about elevations, those are some of the concerns I have, and you address that in the meeting. And just because they want to keep it level with the backyard, are there any laws that say that they can only elevate it so much, or only count, if you raise the front elevation, do you actually get to take the 24 feet up higher with raising the elevation of the ground?
Well, I do have some questions on the Southwest Street elevation height datum. It looks like they arbitrarily manipulated the grade, as Paul Webb pointed out, to satisfy Prop D. But I'm not sure, I wish you had maybe had these conversations earlier. I'm not sure if Tom King is going to be willing to work with you and buy one more month on this project or not. So I'd like the board to chime in if they could, please.
Well, Joe, to address that, it sounds as though there's been some major modifications to these plans that the city hasn't seen yet. So are we even in a position to take any action on this today? We don't have a cycle issues letter, as far as I know.
Well, we have our initial cycle review comment.
But I mean, with this set of plans.
Yeah, Tom,
I
don't
agree
know.
with Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom, Mr. King, you had indicated that you were going to resubmit. You had some setback items that you were going to resubmit on. And so, yeah, I have the same concern as Paul.
And let me ask one question of Tom Marshall.
Yes, please.
Would a flat roof over the breakfast nook improve things any?
Sure, it would. You know, it would bring back, it would give me some of that view. I mean, I assume if it brought it down 4 feet, potential is there, but we don't know until I see exactly how much it is above the current elevation.
Sure.
I mean, there is some wiggle room there that I'm willing to discuss anything. You know, as long as it works for everybody, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tom King, can you comment on the status of your cycle review issues?
Yes, I had reached out to the board because they wanted me to have your input before resubmitting. So that's why I'm presenting today. And their comments were minor. It was more just, more for the civil engineer than for me. Just
What
showing
about height determination?
height determined, just they wanted me to put string lines, as you guys mentioned.
Thank you.
What's up?
Thank you very much. I was going to propose the streamline elevations.
But I don't think he's referring to the front yard setbacks.
I'm not. So
Oh,
I'm talking
sorry.
about string lines to better explain our terraced retaining walls and also our overall height limit, and mentioning exactly what that datum is. So just more clarification to show that we're within the building envelope. So those were the only real comments. They had determined that it conformed with the bulk and scale and character of the community. And it was mostly engineering items that were awaiting response.
Well, I am of the opinion that it does conform with the character of the neighborhood, and I think the architecture is really interesting, and I think the plan is very dynamic and fun, but I don't think you're imminently close to getting permits. So my inclination is to ask if you and the board feel that this is reasonable to continue to next month's meeting to enable two things to happen. One, you to clarify the issues with the height and to find that zoning ordinance section, that muni code section, or that info bulletin, whatever it is. And two, to have Mr. Marshall meet with his neighbors and discuss if they're willing to negotiate. And however you guys negotiate or don't negotiate is up, it's between two private parties. It has really nothing to do with us or the city.
Well, I like to comment. I'm not comfortable moving this project forward personally. I can't see the height thing. I was a dental hygienist, Tom, and I got to have stuff laid out for me. And many of us aren't architects or city people. I'm also concerned about that FAR bonus because that's the first time we've seen it.
Exactly.
And then all that grade issues. You sort of danced around my questions when I went to propose grade and this and that, and you started throwing out datum and other kind of words, and I don't feel those issues are addressed, so I'm not comfortable moving this project forward.
I think, Corley, you and I are sort of saying the same thing, different context.
Yeah, and I agree completely with both of you. And let me say to Tom King, it looks as though you have tried to accommodate Mr. Marshall
Agreed.
to an extent, and I appreciate that, and I wish that every architect that comes before us was willing to work with their neighbors to the extent that you seem to have. That doesn't mean that Mr. Marshall's going to be happy with what you've done, but at least you've done something which is laudable.
Okay.
Exactly. I agree with that. Thank you, Paul.
So, Sam, do you have a comment, sir?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. I think I would like to see the, I don't know, whatever you call the ADU modification of the FAR or whatever.
Mhm.
Because that to me is something that I think this committee has to get a handle on. I wasn't really aware of it before today. And secondly, I do think we need to clarify the height. But then there's still a third thing. I don't think we should use any of our, let's say, permitting process to influence what is really a private commercial transaction. So I want to be very careful in that area too.
Agreed. Okay, I think those are all great comments. Javier, do you have anything to add?
No, I agree with Paul and Corliss' comments regarding the datum point. I wasn't really clear on
Yeah.
how that was established with the fill. So, and Sam's right on. I think we need to clarify the FAR. I'm not familiar with the ADA regulations as well as you guys are.
So Corla, do you care to make a rather complicated motion to continue, basically to continue this next month's meeting?
Well, I can make it uncomplicated. I move to continue this to next month unless the applicant wants to move forward with the board and take his chances, but they're not gonna like it, Tom. I can tell you right now, they won't like it.
Do you, am I muted or not?
No,
No,
we can hear you.
You're right.
Would it be okay for me to present to the full board next week and bring these items to more clarity? Is that?
Well, I think you're wasting your time because I've
Yeah.
been reviewing projects for a number of years and looking at them for a while, and I'm confused and I'm not comfortable with it, and I would vote it down next week. So if I'm not comfortable as a layperson and going to vote it down, I think the majority of the board's going to feel the same way. So that's why I think you'd be wasting your time. I don't know if your people are on a super tight time limit or what, but that's
Well,
my
we-
perspective.
We wanted to have your recommendations to go take back to the city. We were.
It doesn't matter if you send it back with our recommendations or that or if we send them some during the however many weeks they're going to have it for their re-review. As soon as the board votes, I send in a form called a 620. Your planner gets it and they go check the box and that's all they care about. So
Okay.
whether we continue this a month or don't is not going to have any significant effect on the overall timing of your project. But I do think if you wait and if you work with the neighbors and if you work with Mr. Marshall, and if something is either reached as an agreement or not reached as an agreement, this group will have a much better ability to vote to approve your project. And then the board does tend to follow our recommendations. So, I think it's to your absolute advantage to try to work things out a little bit better and to come back before us next month. I would put you first on the agenda next month.
Okay.
That said, Corla,
Yes, that's my motion.
do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Corla and Sam, okay?
Okay.
All in favor of Corla's motion?
Continue.
Where's my?
Margaret, what are you?
I in agreement too.
Okay, so this time it is
It's 5-0 though.
5-0. Okay.
Yeah.
Tom King and Tom Marshall, we'll see you both next month. It will be on the second Thursday of June. Same time, same place.
Same procedure.
All right.
Thank you, everyone, for your time and interest. This is a challenging one, but we try to get it right, and we'd rather take a little bit more time and do that.
I echo Paul. I'd like to thank both Toms
Mhm.
for, their ability to work with each other. And, he could have come straight out and gone straight up and, and your angles, Tom Marshall, all it's been wonderful presentation, but I'm just missing too much information.
Yeah, and Tom Marshall, I have a view from my upper story and my second floor deck. And I live in fear of the day that my neighbor decides to redevelop his property because I lose my view.
It
And
happens.
very little I can do to stop it.
It happens. Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
And Tom, I'll reach out to you tomorrow, as well as to Steve and Elizabeth, Beth, and see if we can, I'll make an appointment with them, but also discuss it with you too.
Yeah, the reason I've been leaving it in their court to discuss things with you just as neighbors. That's
sure.
the reason I haven't gotten involved. I've just been trying to be sensitive to, your view corridors.
I appreciate that. Well, and we'll have to make a plan to get together, or at least talk by phone.
Yeah, but I was trying to make that, because it is, like they said, this is a private view issue.
Right.
So I'm trying to make that between the two neighbors, not get myself directly involved in it. I mean,
Well, but
years ago, I used to work with Don Etz, an architect, years ago, and we worked on projects in Point Loma where we had clients who paid good money to purchase view easements across neighbors' lots so that they couldn't, it was binding with the property. They couldn't develop within that area over a certain height. So I know how these things work between neighbors. And I didn't want to get in the middle of that.
I appreciate that.
We need I need your plans to know exactly what's happening so that I know what I'm dealing with. And there's, like I said, there's still some things that, we're unsure exactly where that is going to. But I have some ideas. We'll talk tomorrow.
We recently heard a project where a guy had a view issue and he bought the house next door and tore it down. Problem solved.
But we had one over here off of Rosecrans, and he bought the house below and next, so.
Or they can buy it and put a view envelope restriction on it and sell it again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to point out, if I could, is just, this is their dream house. They'd started with just a little ADU addition over the existing garage. And I know this, we're going to live here forever. We want this to be our dream house. And part of that is enjoying, really, Tom, the same views that you have, or similar to. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. And the more that we limit where we can build, it really restricts their view, because as you can, I think your photographs from your living room were the perfect example that I didn't provide of when you look at their ridge line, they're kind of down in a hole. They're between a 2-story house and you, and they don't get to see out as well as you do from their vantage point.
And let me
I
add,
appreciate that. My preference would be that they just move it back 5 to 10 feet. And you told me the complications of that today, and I appreciate that too. So we'll talk. We'll figure
I'm
something.
confident you guys will resolve something.
and let's just say,
we'll
we're not going to be in the position of deciding who gets the view. That's not our role.
Precisely.
Understood.
Yes,
Understood.
precisely.
Okay. Well,
But thank you all for-
thanks to both of you, and thanks to everyone on the committee. We've gone long once again, but I'd like to adjourn this meeting at 4:40.
Pretty.
So.
And thank you all for keeping this on a